what is content, right? The idea I have here on content is your product. Everything that you produce is something that is essentially an advertisement for an interaction. Whether you're actually selling something physically, or you're providing a service, or you're just putting information out there, everything is advertising. And your website is essentially an online storefront. Your content is your product. And in a physical sense, we can see when people are walking by a store. We can look and watch how they interact with the merchandise. We can trace and track and figure out different dynamics that are working in that sort of storefront in the real world. We can do the same online, but typically most of us don't, because we're not looking at it just from a retail transaction perspective. We have all kinds of different ideas about what we're doing. But really all people are doing when they're searching is they're essentially window shopping. They're saying, hey, Internet, give me this information I'm looking for. And if that storefront looks like what they're looking for, they'll sort of come in, right? So taking this one step further in terms of the retail analogy, everyone understands its location. Everyone wants to have a corner location in a high traffic area. Just think about wherever you're living, think about the main commercial avenues or streets. Think about what are the most prominent stores or restaurants or locations. Everyone is wanting that prominent location, commercial, residential, you name it. People want the prominent location. And because they want that prominent location, the owner of the property can charge a nice, amount for the rent, because they know you're getting the street traffic. They know you're getting the visibility. And that cost becomes calculated into how you're running your business. It's very similar online. People still want to have their site be the most prominent site for whatever topic, whatever product, whatever service you're looking for. And what SEO can help you do is it can help you avoid the reality, and that is that oftentimes, many times online, we're stuck on a quiet street without good lighting, without good visibility. Just because we open up the store, so to speak, just because we put up a site out there, doesn't mean that people are going to find it. It doesn't mean that we're going to be able to accomplish our business goals. SEO kind of evens the field, so to speak, and provides you with a far more prominent location. I put in a comment here when I talk about content, and I put it in relative to paid ads. In the association world, you can charge a nice amount for that high-profile booth, for that booth that's located on the main aisle, or that's going to get the most foot traffic, that's close to exciting events that are occurring as part of the large-scale event. And we know that we can charge less, or we will charge less, for that quiet, dusty booth in the corner. So based on what people are wanting to do, based on what their budget is, you can essentially tier your pricing, right? Paid ads act in a very similar way. Paid ads are essentially a way for us to try to pay money to get higher rank. And lo and behold, if we do pay ads to Google and we buy AdWords, or Google Ads as it's now called, guess what we can do? We can increase our page ranking, because they're going to want to have the connection be made between the paid ad and the ranking of a page.
So, but, up until this point, you're saying you can use SEO to avoid that undesirable location. Are you suggesting that you need AdWords, or that you don't need AdWords to get started? I mean, I think there's this perception that SEO is free and AdWords can be cheap, but I don't know of a lot of associations that actually, pay for AdWords, but right. I could be wrong.
Well, and I think the steps are: take care of your SEO first, right? Do what is free, so to speak. You might be paying a consultant, you might be paying someone for services, but do what is free and available before you begin to pay for specific actions, right? So, the way the AdWords works is that you can pay money for words, for concepts, and you can set up the ad, and you can kind of set your budget, and it's a really impressive tool, Google Ads, I should say. It's a really impressive tool, and it's a really good way of kind of determining what is useful from a keyword perspective, what isn't. But I think a lot of people typically go after it to say, hey, my first step is to put out the ads. My first step is to spend money to make people aware of where we're at. And I would typically say, let's make sure your SEO is dialed up and is in a good situation before you start spending money on the ads.
So, when because you've had a number of sites that have been on page one of Google search results, did you have to use any kind of paid ads or anything like that to get that ranking?
Typically, no, but and that's where I kind of come with the idea that you want to make sure your SEO is fully enabled, and that you're taking full advantage of how the code works, and that the sort of Google Ads approach is a way to increase your presence if you're sort of stuck in a competitive situation with a number of other different associations or competitive websites. It's a way for you to be able to get a slightly higher ranking.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do it as well as a way to kind of reinforce for the customer, for the potential customer, I should say, we are authoritative when it comes to this subject, this service, this product, because not only are you seeing that Google ad, but then you're seeing on the same page the results of what we're trying to provide.
Is there a perception that if you show up at the top rankings because of an ad, but you're not on that home page, on that page one, that you're not an expert? And the reason I ask that, and I'm kind of reflecting on my own behavior, I usually blow right through the ads and don't even look at them, and I look at whoever's at the top below the ads. And maybe it's just my own bias, or I guess I don't really know where that habit came from, but it's my perception that there's the people who pay for the AdWords, and then there's the people who actually show up at the top because they know what they're talking about.
Right. I think it's far more common what you're talking about. I think people aren't paying attention to those ads as much. I mean, they're paying attention. They're clicking on them. Obviously, Google is an enormous company.
Right.
And it's a significant amount of their revenue. So it absolutely works. But I think the average person is not looking at that ad as being relevant. They're basically saying, hey, I'm about to listen to an advertisement, or I'm going to go to a landing page that's just going to bombard me with advertising and marketing. They're really looking at maybe the organic result, the actual connection. So I use it to reinforce it. I also use Google Ads to test concepts and to see if there's value. If I'm deciding between a set of keywords and another set of keywords, I'll just kind of play around with Google Ads to see what is being searched for and what creates a better result.
Right.
But you can get your site ranked and get information out there without resulting in using Google Ads, and you can also use it as long as you've set up the SEO in a very effective way. One experience I had was taking control of the website and running the marketing and the SEO was changing how their ad budget worked, because they were spending tremendous amounts of money on a very broad category of concepts. And so they were getting links and clicks and amazing views, but none of them were resulting really in the conversion, the transaction.
Right.
So what I began to do is I began to work with Google Ads and began to narrow the search and the keywords to very specific concepts, so that I could then say, okay, here we're actually converting when it comes to service A, B, and C,
right.
Not just, hey, we'll provide service to everyone. Because
right.
the ad budget was essentially being, you were paying for ads that weren't converting.
So they were taking a shotgun approach, but they didn't actually know what pellet hit. And
Exactly.
So you were able to help them get down to the thing and say, look, you don't have to do all of this. This one thing is the thing that delivers, 60% of your conversions. This one delivers 30%. Do those two, and you got 90% of the conversions that you would have gotten for all of this stuff that you were paying for.
Exactly. It's better utilizing your ad spend, right? And I think it's important to kind of note that, even though I'm critical of Google Ads, I use them all the time. It's an effective tool. But I'm also critical of just kind of throwing money away randomly at things.
Well, fair enough.
You should spend the money and the time on making sure your content is optimized for the search engine first, and then kind of play your money, spend your money on the advertising to see what works.
Right.
What's really cool, and maybe this is a different conversation that we can have about Google Ads, is that the tool is impressive. It's a really, really impressive tool. The information it provides you and the data analysis that you are able to get into because you're signed up for Google Ads to Google Analytics provides you with a really good insight in terms of how the keywords work and how things work relative to your site. So, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. All I'm trying to say here is
Nice.
SEO first, Google Ads second.
Right. Well, and I think maybe you're right. We do another talk about, everything you can learn from Google Ads without having to spend money on it.
That's right, without having to spend as much money on it, and Google wants you to use your tools. I'm happy to use Google's tools, and I'm happy to use Google Ads. But in terms of an association that has a tight budget, be cautious at first, right?
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, content has all these different permutations, and I think the key thing here is that it is your product, and whether you realize it or not, you are putting it out there for people to window shop. You're putting it out for people to browse, quite literally, and you're putting it out there for sale. And just as the merchant is really focused on providing an attractive display and hopefully pleasant and efficient, workforce, the same thing is true and applicable with your content. You want people to find it, you want people to interact with it, and that's essentially your product. So I think earlier in our conversation, I was talking about this notion that content is everything online. And this is an example of what I mean by content is everything online. Anything that you are doing as an association or as a business, every step of it that is made available online, whether it's available for the public or behind a login page, all of that stuff is searchable. And all of that stuff has a relation to search engine optimization. We can go into further conversations about each one of these particular types of content. I think we've touched a little bit on sort of the web page and the PDF, but each one of these types of information can be looked at from the SEO perspective and can be optimized to be able to be viewed. And the key thing I kind of want to make sure that people understand here with this display of information is that you want to coordinate your search engine optimization, your keywords, your process. You want to coordinate it through all of this different types of content. So if I take just the first couple ones as an example, if I'm putting out a web page about SEO for associations, I'm also going to look at the blog post. I'm going to look at the social media. I'm going to look at the images associated with it. And I'm going to make sure that I'm reinforcing the message of SEO for associations on all those different types of content. And as you can see with associations, the sky's the limit in terms of what can be searched for. You may be surprised, but just even the way in which you describe your events, the way you title the events, the way that you put the description of the events in there, the way that you even come up with titling what your certification process is. All that information is searchable. And as we've seen with a lot of our association partners, when I'm looking at the Google Analytics, events show up very high. White papers show up very high in terms of the traffic that people are experiencing when they're putting that information out there. Another thing that ranks very high in terms of interactivity are the emails. And it's only, I think, by accident that that information is being searched for. Mostly it's the customers, the association members who are engaging with that content. But if these associations took a little bit more time to coordinate the messages and the keywords and all these different content delivery processes, then their results would be quite significantly increased. What do I mean by that? If we have an event and we have an event that's going to say, hey, we want people to learn about SEO for associations, we're going to want to make sure that we put that information in at every single step so that people can find that. Not just the people on our email list, but the general public if we want to sort of promote the notion of SEO for associations. And so we kind of use it as a checklist to kind of go through to make sure, are we titling things a certain way? Are we providing a description a certain way? And I think that, as it refers to associations, you'll see quite significant results if you coordinate all these different types of information.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, this is probably subject for a different conversation. There's a lot of information here. And there's even some information that I may be missing, but I think it gives you a picture of what I mean by content.
Well, and I think at some point in the future, we could probably do a talk on just how do you coordinate your different content within the context of your SEO campaign. Because, I'm thinking about, you know, LinkedIn, right? If you're going to do something, you put it out, how do you coordinate that with LinkedIn so that you get search results from LinkedIn that also drive traffic back to your site to do conversions, right? Because that's the ultimate goal. It's like, hey, I want to land some new clients. I want to maybe sell some of my products or services. If you're an association, I want to have more people maybe come and check us out, maybe join, maybe attend an event, maybe buy some of our materials. Yeah, those sorts of, what's that path to conversion, and is there a sweet spot? And I don't know the answer, and you maybe do, Paul, is there a sweet spot if I put content out on the website and on the blogs and LinkedIn, is that going to drive the results I want? Or how do we even understand that combination?
Right, and I think you hit it on the nail on the head there in terms of, what is the sweet spot? What is the formula? What are the steps that we need to take to generate the interaction, the member engagement?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that the sweet spot really relates to how much time you have to coordinate these different initiatives and how much time you have in analyzing the results. Because we can go ahead and look at every single one of these things and think, hey, I've got to put something out relative to each one of these different types of content. And we can spend a tremendous amount of time to do that. But if we don't move the needle, then all we're doing is spending quality time, right?
Yep.
So I think there's a lot of trial and error in a lot of this. But I think it's typically if you have 2 or 3 different main channels and you're coordinating between 2 or 3 different main channels, then you have a pretty good indication as to, is there a cohesiveness to your effort. So take social media, for example. There's a lot of folks who are really good at social media, who really are native to social media platforms and who really know how to promote information well on Facebook, on LinkedIn, you name it. Those same folks may not be involved with the people who are producing the white papers. They may not be involved with the people who are producing the web pages. They may not be involved with the certifications, the training. And so what you need to do is you need to make sure that you're coordinating it to say, okay, the group who's involved or the person who's involved with this particular function, this little function, we're all making sure we've got the same message coming through.
So are you suggesting then that there needs to be almost an education program within the context of the association that crosses their compartments so that publications and events and continuing education, they're all in agreement that, yes, we're going to use these terms and this is how we're going to put that content out there so that they reinforce themselves? Because I could see, the executive director's monthly blog post or these various things that happen could all reinforce the same message if they're paying attention to that. Is that what you're suggesting?
Absolutely. And it's typically like the second or third step I take when we're kind of looking at an association's SEO presence is to say, okay, here's what we need to do. We understand what it is right now, but we really need to coordinate this message between all these different stakeholders, all these different departments, different groups. And taking what you're saying too about the president's message or the CEO's message, that's kind of where you want to start with it, what does the leadership want to present in terms of what this association's message is? And then you want to be able to reinforce that through these other different functions. You also kind of want to have an open, honest conversation when it comes to keywords, because, just as maybe you and I might have a different idea about keywords, if we are having this conversation at some point, we've got to say, hey, for this effort, let's just try this. Let's see if it works. And if it doesn't move the needle, then we can kind of try a different effort, and then maybe we switch out one of these words, or maybe we focus on something different. I think we as humans tend to think that the first idea that pops in our heads is the right idea, and it's the best idea, and it's my idea, and it's my words, and you have to be careful of that because, our natural tendency is to want to kind of fight over esoteric concepts, but you just have to kind of pick what are the words we're going to go for.
Mm-hmm.
And in our own world, right, we have a post that we recently just put up, and we were kind of, what are these keywords that we're going to want to look at? What is this concept? We had this concept, and then we have these keywords. And then we say, well, let's just try these keywords to see if this is what we're going to do. We've done a little bit of research on it. And if it doesn't move the needle, then we go back and we, look at that to see if it does move the needle.
So you may also be suggesting, as I understand it, and I'm kind of laughing because I'm laughing at myself, there is a data-driven way to make decisions about what's the best way to portray this. And so whereas we might get into a debate, kind of pre-SEO thinking, well, this is the way to describe it, this is the way to describe it. And, some of us with sort of strong personalities, might think we're right because we have a strong personality without regard to the data that says, no, this is what people are looking for. So even though that's what you call it, nobody else is searching for what you call it. So if we want success, this is how we get there.
Right. The data doesn't lie, right?
Right.
The information is either there or it's not. You either move the needle or you haven't, and I think it's accepting of the fact that you're kind of learning how to do this. You're learning how to promote these words.
Right. That leads me to think that what you're really saying is this is an iterative process, and that you got to try it, you got to get the data out there, and you said something, and it's like, let's see what happens. And so it's not one and done. It is get it out there, measure it, tweak it, get it out there again, rinse and repeat.
Right. And you want to be cognizant of the time as you're going through this iterative process. You want to look at, okay, I can't iterate everything. I just want to kind of go through an iterative process on the key pieces that we're putting out there. If we're, putting out, 5 tweets a day, right? You're not probably tracking each one of those tweets to see what it does. If we're putting out a blog post, maybe it's not every blog post, right? You want to be, economical with your time, but you do want to have an iterative process to kind of determine how does it work, how does it not work.
Right.
And I typically look at it in terms of quarters, right? I look at it in terms of a time period. Within a certain time period, we're going to sort of push a certain concept. Let's line it up, see what it does on the content that we think are applicable to it. Let's see if we can push the envelope, And a good way of approaching this, as I have found, is that you just get it out the door, your normal process, you see what the results are, and then you compare and contrast to see if you tweak it.